The lecture hall on Vega Prime Station buzzed with the sounds of dozens of different alien species. Some made clicking noises with their mandibles. Others hummed in frequencies that made the metal walls vibrate. A few communicated through flashing colors on their skin. The air smelled like ozone and exotic chemicals from so many different worlds. Commander Hayuk stood at the front of the room, his crystalline body catching the light from the overhead panels. His race, the Altarians, looked like they were made of living glass. Right now, his surface showed a deep blue color, which meant he was focused and serious. He touched a control pad, and the lights dimmed. "Attention, cadets," Commander Hayuk said. His voice came through translator speakers around the room so everyone could understand. "Today, we will study one of the most remarkable survival cases in recent military history." The massive holographic display above his head flickered to life. Grainy, black and white footage appeared. It showed a rocky landscape under a pale sky. Mountains rose in the distance like broken teeth. The ground was covered with sharp stones and deep cracks. "This is Keth 7, Commander Hyuk explained. "A moon orbiting the gas giant terminus. The environment is hostile. The atmosphere is thin. The temperature drops to -40 degrees at night. There is no plant life, no water sources, no shelter except natural caves." A cadet in the third row raised a tentacle-like arm. This was Tay, a Zephyrian whose species looked like purple octopi with too many eyes. "Sir, why would anyone go to such a place?" "Keth 7 sits on a major shipping route," Commander Hayuk replied. 6 months ago, Vorthak raiders began using it as a base to attack merchant vessels. The Galactic Defense Force sent a reconnaissance unit to investigate. The footage changed. Now it showed the wreckage of military vehicles scattered across the rocky ground. Pieces of armor and weapons lay everywhere. Scorch marks from energy weapons painted black streaks on the stones. "Recon Unit Delta 7 was ambushed," Commander Hayuk continued. 12 soldiers died in the first 5 minutes of combat. The Vorthak raiders outnumbered them 4-1. Superior weapons, superior numbers, superior knowledge of the terrain. Bo, a Nexari cadet with silver skin and 4 arms, leaned forward. His species prided themselves on being perfect tactical planners. "A classic military disaster, poor intelligence, inadequate force strength, predictable outcome." "Indeed," Commander Hayuk agreed. "Except for one detail." The footage shifted again. Now it showed a single figure in damaged military gear. The armor was cracked and blackened. The helmet was missing. Even through the poor quality of the recording, everyone could see this soldier was hurt. They moved with a slight limp. "One soldier survived the initial ambush," Commander Hayuk said. "They were separated from the main unit when the attack began. What happened next defies standard tactical doctrine." The figure on the screen began moving across the rocky landscape. They stayed low, using the terrain for cover. When Vorthak patrol craft flew overhead, the figure pressed against rocks and remained perfectly still until the danger passed. "Day 1, Commander Hayuk narrated. Subject begins evasion procedures. Note the movement patterns. They avoid the obvious routes and use natural camouflage effectively." Wu, a draconian cadet whose species looked like humanoid dragons, snorted flames through his nostrils. "Basic survival training. Any warrior knows to hide from superior forces." "True," Commander Hyuk said. "But watch what happens on day 2. Footage jumped forward. Now the figure was gathering pieces of wreckage from the battlefield. They worked quickly but carefully, always watching for enemy patrols. They collected broken weapons, damaged equipment, even pieces of Vorthak gear. "The subject begins salvage operations," Commander Hayuk explained. "But not random collection. Everything they take serves a specific purpose." In the back corner of the lecture hall, a human cadet named Bin shifted uncomfortably in his seat. He was smaller than most of the other students. His brown hair was cut short in military style. His uniform was neat but plain compared to the exotic appearances around him. Bin watched the figure on screen with growing unease. Something about the way they moved seemed familiar. The slight favor of the left leg, the habit of checking over, the right shoulder every few steps, the way they held their head tilted slightly to one side when listening for danger. "Day 3 brings the first tactical innovation," Commander Hayuk continued. The footage showed the figure working inside a cave. They had torn apart several pieces of equipment and were connecting components in ways that made no sense according to standard technical manuals. Wires were spliced together, power cells were rewired, chemical cartridges were opened and their contents mixed. Improvised explosive device, Bo observed. Crude but potentially effective. More than effective, Commander Hayek corrected. Watch. The scene changed to show a narrow canyon. Vorthak raiders were moving through it in formation, hunting for the escaped soldier. Suddenly, explosions ripped through the canyon walls. Tons of rock fell, crushing the raiders and blocking both ends of the passage. The alien cadets made various sounds of surprise. Some species showed amazement through color changes. Others released pheromones that made the air taste different. Controlled demolition, Commander Hayek said. Using salvaged materials to create shaped charges capable of precise rock fracturing, the subject eliminated an entire Vorthak patrol and created an impassable barrier with materials that should not have been able to produce such results. The representative of the synthetic collective, spoke in their mechanical voice. Analysis indicates insufficient explosive yield for observed destruction. How was this achieved? Unknown, Commander Hayek admitted. Our demolitions experts have studied this footage for months. They cannot replicate the technique. Bin's hands clenched into fists. He remembered that canyon. He remembered the desperate hours spent in the cave, trying to figure out how to turn broken junk into something that could save his life. He remembered his father's voice explaining how construction charges worked during those summer jobs before he enlisted. Day 5 shows further adaptation, Commander Hayek continued. The footage now showed the figure setting traps. Not simple snares or pitfalls, but complex mechanical devices that used counterweights and springs made from salvaged metal. When Vorthak scouts triggered them, the traps didn't just capture or kill. They sent signals to other devices that created diversions elsewhere. Coordinated trap network, Wu observed with grudging respect. This warrior thinks like a draconian battle tactician. Day 8 demonstrates medical knowledge, Commander Hayek said. The scene was harder to watch now. The figure was clearly injured, with dark stains on their uniform that could only be blood. But instead of seeking help or giving up, they were performing some kind of surgery on themselves, using sterilized tools taken from dead Vorthak raiders. So-Ra, a Melodian cadet whose species looked like tall, graceful beings made of flowing energy, made a sound like wind chimes in distress. This person is operating on themselves with enemy equipment. How do they know Vorthak biotools are compatible with their physiology? They don't, Commander Hayek replied grimly. Medical analysis suggests they performed the surgery based on pure guesswork and desperation. It should have killed them. Instead, it saved their life. The alien cadets were becoming more agitated as the briefing continued. This was not how warfare was supposed to work. Soldiers were expected to follow doctrine, use proper equipment, and surrender when faced with impossible odds. This figure was doing none of those things. Bin felt sick to his stomach. He remembered that night in the cave, cutting into his own leg with a Vorthak medical cutter, trying to remove infected tissue before gangrene set in. He remembered the pain and the certainty that he was about to die from his own desperate stupidity. Day 12 shows technological adaptation, Commander Hayek announced. Now the footage revealed the figure working with captured Vorthak electronics. Without training manuals or proper tools, they were somehow managing to interface human and alien systems. Jury-rigged connections sparked and smoked, but they worked. Impossible, Bo declared. Vorthak technology uses quantum crystalline matrices. No one can operate their systems without proper neural interfacing. And yet, Commander Hyuk said, as the footage showed the figure successfully activating a Vorthak communication device. Day 15 demonstrates the results of this technological integration. The final scenes of this part of the footage showed the figure using a combination of human tactics and alien equipment to stage increasingly sophisticated attacks on Vorthak positions. They moved like a ghost across the rocky landscape, striking without warning and disappearing before the enemy could respond. 47 days, Commander Hayek concluded as the footage paused. One soldier, no support, no supplies, no communication with friendly forces, facing an enemy that outnumbered them hundreds to one. The lecture hall was silent, except for the various breathing, humming, and mechanical sounds of the different species. Tomorrow, Commander Hyuk announced, We will analyze the final weeks of this remarkable survival story. Class dismissed. As the alien cadets began filing out, chattering excitedly in their various languages, Ben remained in his seat. His face was pale, and his hands were shaking slightly. The next morning, the lecture hall filled with alien cadets again. But this time, the atmosphere was different. Word had spread through the academy about yesterday's footage. Cadets who normally sat apart from each other were clustered together, discussing what they had seen. The air buzzed with excitement and confusion. Commander Hyuk entered the room, his crystalline body now showing a pale green color that meant he was anticipating something important. He had received messages from several department heads overnight. The footage from yesterday had caused quite a stir among the faculty. Yesterday we saw the first 12 days of survival on Keth 7. Commander Hyuk began. Today we will examine the middle period. This is where the subject's tactics become truly extraordinary. The holographic display came to life again. The timestamp showed day 15. The figure in the damaged armor looked worse than before. Their movements were slower, more careful. Dark stains covered most of their uniform now. Day 15, Commander Hyuk announced. The subject has been without proper food for 2 weeks. Medical scans suggest severe dehydration and multiple injuries. By all tactical analysis, they should be dead or captured. The footage showed the figure working in a new cave system. They had gathered an impressive collection of salvaged equipment. Vorthak weapons, human gear, pieces of crashed vehicles, even chunks of strange metal that looked like they came from the moon's natural formations. Note the systematic approach, Commander Huck pointed out. Everything is organized by function. Power sources in one area, communication devices in another, weapons and tools sorted by effectiveness. This indicates long-term strategic thinking, not desperate survival. Tay waved a tentacle. But, sir, how do they know which alien components are compatible? Vorthak technology is completely different from human systems. An excellent question, Commander Hyuk replied. Watch. The footage zoomed in on the figure's hands. They were testing each piece of equipment methodically. When they found 2 components that might work together, they tried connecting them in different ways. Most attempts failed with sparks or smoke, but occasionally something would work. Trial and error, Do observed through their mechanical speakers. Highly inefficient. Statistical probability suggests this approach would fail within 3 days. Normally, yes, Commander Hyuk agreed. But this subject appears to learn from each failure. Watch day 17. The scene changed to show the figure working much faster now. They barely tested combinations anymore. Instead, they seemed to know instinctively which parts would work together. Their hands moved with confidence, creating devices that should have been impossible. Ben watched from his seat in the back, feeling more uncomfortable with each passing minute. He remembered those long nights in the caves, his fingers cut and burned from handling alien electronics. He remembered the moment when he finally understood how Vorthak power cells worked differently from human batteries. The alien technology didn't just provide energy, it responded to neural impulses. Day 20 shows the first major technological breakthrough, Commander Hyuk continued. The footage revealed something that made all the alien cadets gasp in their various ways. The figure had created a communication device that combined human voice transmission with Vorthak quantum broadcasting. It shouldn't have worked. The 2 technologies were based on completely different scientific principles. Impossible, Bo declared, his silver skin flashing with agitation. No single individual can understand both human and Vorthak communication systems well enough to merge them. Yet here we see it working, Commander Hyuk replied, as the footage showed the device successfully intercepting Vorthak radio transmissions. The figure listened to enemy communications for several hours, taking notes on a piece of salvaged metal. They drew maps showing Vorthak patrol routes and base locations. More importantly, they began to understand the enemy's search patterns. Day 22 demonstrates advanced psychological warfare, Commander Hyuk announced. The new footage was different. Instead of hiding from Vorthak patrols, the figure was now actively manipulating them. They left false trails that led enemy groups into dangerous areas of the moon. They created fake radio signals that confused Vorthak commanders. Most cleverly, they began using the enemy's own communication system against them. The subject has learned to imitate Vorthak communication protocols, Commander Hayek explained. They send false orders that redirect patrols away from their location. Wu breathed a small puff of flame in admiration. This warrior thinks like a dragon. They turn the enemy's strength into weakness. Sora made a sound like bells ringing. But how do they know Vorthak language? The linguistic structure is completely different from any known human dialect. Bin closed his eyes, remembering those desperate hours listening to enemy radio chatter. At first, the alien words had meant nothing, but gradually he began to recognize patterns. Command words that appeared frequently, numbers that corresponded to times and locations. The breakthrough came when he realized Vorthak military communication was much simpler than their regular language. Just like human military radio, it used shortened phrases and standard formats. Day 25 brings us to perhaps the most remarkable sequence, Commander Hayek said. The footage now showed the figure preparing for something big. They had spent 3 days building a complex device that combined human explosives with Vorthak energy weapons and some kind of timing mechanism made from salvaged chronometers. What are they constructing? Du asked, their analytical systems struggling to identify. The purpose. Watch, Commander Hyuk replied. The scene changed to show a Vorthak supply convoy moving across the lunar surface. Heavy transport vehicles carried weapons, food, and equipment to the enemy base. The convoy was heavily guarded with patrol craft, flying overhead and armed escorts on the ground. Suddenly, explosions erupted throughout the convoy, but these weren't random attacks. The timing was perfect. Each explosion triggered the next one in sequence, creating a chain reaction that destroyed the entire supply train while making it look like an accident caused by unstable cargo. The alien cadets made sounds of amazement. Some species showed respect through color changes. Others released pheromones that filled the air with the scent of admiration. Coordinated demolition disguised as accidental explosion, Commander Hayuk explained. The Vorthak commanders believed their own supplies had malfunctioned. They spent days investigating their equipment instead of searching for the real culprit. How did they calculate the timing so precisely? Bo asked, his tactical mind struggling to understand the complexity. Unknown, Commander Hayuk admitted. Our best demolitions experts estimate this would require at least 6 specialists working with advanced computers to plan properly. Bin felt sweat on his forehead despite the cool air in the lecture hall. He remembered that convoy. He remembered spending 2 days watching their routes, timing their movements, calculating blast patterns with nothing but salvaged metal plates to write on. He remembered his father's voice again, explaining how construction demolitions worked, how one charge could trigger another if the timing was right. Day 30 demonstrates medical improvisation, Commander Hayek continued. The footage was disturbing now. The figure was clearly in bad shape. Their movements were stiff and painful, but instead of giving up, they had created some kind of medical station using captured Vorthak healing devices and human first aid supplies. Self-administered medical treatment using incompatible alien technology, Commander Hayek explained. Medical analysis suggests multiple fractures, severe infections, and significant blood loss. Any normal soldier would be incapacitated. The Kauzi figure on screen was performing what looked like surgery on themselves again. But this time they were using Vorthak healing rays combined with human medical techniques. The alien medical equipment was designed for Vorthak physiology, which was completely different from human biology. Using it wrong could cause more damage than healing. They're adapting the equipment, Sora observed with wonder, changing the frequency and intensity to match human cellular structure. How do they know what changes to make? Tay asked. They don't, Commander Hayek replied grimly. They're experimenting on themselves. Each adjustment could be fatal, but the figure survived each treatment. More than survived. They seem to be getting stronger. The alien medical technology, when properly modified, was actually more effective on human injuries than human medicine would have been. Day 35 shows tactical evolution, Commander Hayek announced. The footage revealed that the figure was no longer just surviving. They were winning. Vorthak patrol groups were avoiding entire sections of the moon because too many of their units had disappeared in those areas. Enemy commanders were arguing over radio about whether they were facing a single opponent or an entire hidden army. Psychological dominance, Wu observed with growing respect. This warrior has made the enemy fear shadows. The figure had learned. to use every aspect of the moon's environment as a weapon. They triggered rock slides that crushed enemy vehicles. They used the thin atmosphere to their advantage, creating pressure differentials that damaged Vorthak equipment. They even found ways to use the moon's weak gravity to set traps that wouldn't work on planets with stronger gravitational fields. The third day of the briefing brought even more cadets to the lecture hall. News of the mysterious survival footage had spread throughout Vega Prime Station. Students from other programs had requested permission to attend. Even some junior faculty members sat in the back rows, curious about the case that had everyone talking. Commander Hayuk stood before the packed auditorium, his crystalline form now showing a deep purple color that indicated anticipation mixed with concern. He had spent the previous evening reviewing classified files and consulting with his superiors. What he was about to reveal would change how many species viewed military doctrine. Before we continue with the final analysis, Commander Hayuk began, I must share information that has been classified until now. The identity of this survivor has been kept secret for security reasons, but recent events have made disclosure necessary. The room fell silent. Even the usual background sounds of different species communicating stopped. Everyone focused on the commander with intense attention. The individual you have been studying for the past 2 days, Commander Hayuk said slowly, is human. The reaction was immediate and explosive. Alien cadets erupted in sounds of disbelief. Some species showed shock through rapid color changes. Others released pheromones that made the air thick with the scent of confusion. The draconian cadets breathed small jets of flame in surprise. Impossible, Bo declared, his silver skin flashing, angry red patterns. Humans are new to the galactic community. They lack the evolutionary advantages necessary for such combat excellence. Several other cadets voiced similar protests. The Nixari were known as master tacticians. The Draconians were legendary warriors. The Altarians had centuries of military experience. Humans had been part of the Galactic Defense Force for less than 10 years. They were considered useful but unremarkable soldiers. Commander Hayuk raised his hand for silence. I understand your disbelief. The Vorthak shared your assessment. In their tactical databases, humans were classified as minimal threat level. They considered human soldiers to be adequate support troops, but poor frontline fighters. That assessment seems correct based on standard metrics, Dew observed through their mechanical speakers. Human physiology shows average strength, speed, and durability compared to other sapient species. Their technology is relatively primitive. Their military experience is limited. All true, Commander Hayuk agreed. Yet this human survived for 47 days against forces that should have killed them within hours. Let me show you why the Vorthak had to completely revise their threat assessment protocols. The holographic display activated, showing new footage from the final week on Keth 7. The timestamp indicated day 42. The figure on screen looked like a different person now. Their improvised equipment had evolved into something that resembled advanced military gear. Their movements were confident and predatory. By this point, Vorthak Command was convinced they were facing a special operations team, Commander Hayuk explained. They could not accept that one individual was responsible for the systematic destruction of their forces. The footage showed the figure setting up an elaborate trap system around a Vorthak supply depot. It was a masterpiece of engineering that used the moon's geology, captured alien technology, and pure human creativity. When activated, the trap would eliminate the entire depot while making it appear to be an accident. Note the psychological warfare aspect, Commander Hayuk pointed out. This is not just tactical destruction. The trap is designed to make the enemy question their own competence. They will blame equipment failures instead of enemy action. Wu leaned forward, studying the trap design with professional interest. This shows deep understanding of Vorthak psychology. How does a human learn to think like our enemies? An excellent question, Commander Hayuk replied. Human military doctrine emphasizes adaptability and improvisation. While other species train soldiers to follow precise protocols, humans are taught to think creatively when standard procedures fail. The footage continued to day 44. Now the figure was actively hunting Vorthak patrols with methodical efficiency. They had mapped every cave system, every useful piece of terrain, every vulnerability in enemy procedures. What had started as desperate survival had become a one-person military campaign. Impossible odds overcome through persistent adaptation, Commander Hyuk observed. This is apparently typical human behavior under extreme stress. Tae waved several tentacles in confusion. But humans show average intelligence on standardized tests. How do they achieve such tactical brilliance? Human. Intelligence may not test well on our standard measurements, Commander Hyuk admitted, but they possess something that appears to be more valuable in combat situations. They refuse to accept that problems are unsolvable. In the back of the auditorium, Bin felt like he was suffocating. Every word from Commander Hyuk described his desperate weeks on that hellish moon. Every tactical analysis examined his most terrifying moments like they were textbook examples. His hands were clenched so tightly that his knuckles had turned white. Sora noticed her friend's distress. She moved closer to him, her melodious voice barely audible above the classroom discussion. Bin, you look terrible. What is wrong? Bin couldn't answer. How could he explain that he was watching his own survival being dissected by experts who treated it like an impossible achievement? To him, it had just been 47 days of fear, pain, and desperate improvisation. He had never felt heroic or brilliant. He had felt terrified and lucky. Day 45 demonstrates the final tactical evolution, Commander Hyuk announced. The new footage was startling. The figure was now operating a captured Vorthak command vehicle, using it to coordinate false orders throughout the enemy network. They had not only learned to use alien technology, but had gained access to enemy command structures. Cybernetic warfare using improvised interface protocols, Du observed, with something approaching admiration in their mechanical voice. This requires understanding of quantum crystalline matrix systems. Such knowledge typically takes years to acquire. This human learned it in 6 weeks, Commander Hyuk replied, through trial and error, with no formal training and no technical support. The alien cadets were becoming more agitated as the briefing continued. This violated everything they understood about military capabilities and species limitations. Humans were supposed to be average. They weren't supposed to accomplish impossible things through sheer stubborn refusal to give up. The psychological profile is equally remarkable, Commander Hyuk continued. Analysis of the subject's behavior patterns shows no decrease in determination over the entire 47-day period. Most species show declining morale after the first week of isolation. This human actually became more effective over time. Bo raised his hand again, his silver skin now showing deep purple patterns of confusion. Sir, this suggests humans possess hidden military capabilities. Should we revise our assessment of human combat potential? That question is exactly why this briefing is now mandatory for all tactical students, Commander Hyuk replied. We need to understand what makes humans effective in combat situations that would break other species. The footage moved to day 46. The figure was now coordinating multiple simultaneous operations across the moon's surface. They had created a network of automated systems that continued their work even when they were sleeping or unconscious. It was like watching a single person conduct an entire military orchestra. Systems integration on this level typically requires a full technical staff, Commander Hyuk explained. Yet this was accomplished by one individual using salvaged materials and improvised tools. How is this possible? Sora asked, her musical voice carrying a note of wonder. Human neural architecture may be uniquely suited for this type of problem-solving, Commander Hyuk suggested. Unlike species that evolved for specific environmental niches, humans developed in a world that constantly changed around them. They learned to adapt to any situation rather than specializing for particular circumstances. The final footage showed Day 47. A Galactic Defense Force rescue ship approached Keth 7, responding to distress signals that had been transmitted, using the improvised communication array. But when they arrived, they found a moon that had been completely pacified by a single human soldier. The Vorthak abandoned their base during the night, Commander Hyuk explained. They left behind most of their equipment and supplies. Their official report claimed equipment malfunctions and hostile environmental conditions forced their withdrawal. They never admitted being defeated by one person? Wu asked. They never realized they were fighting one person, Commander HFY replied. Their tactical analysis suggested they had encountered a highly advanced special operations team using experimental technology. The footage ended with the rescue ship landing on the lunar surface. The figure emerged from a cave system, looking like they had been through hell, but still moving under their own power. Even through the grainy recording, everyone could see that this person had not just survived, they had prevailed. Ben watched himself walk toward the rescue ship and felt tears starting to form in his eyes. He remembered that moment so clearly. The disbelief when he saw friendly ships approaching. The words hung in the air like a physical presence. Every sound in the packed auditorium stopped. The humming, clicking, chirping, and mechanical noises that normally filled any gathering of alien species fell completely silent. Even the ventilation system seemed quieter. Ben stood in the back row, his human form suddenly seeming much smaller among the towering, exotic shapes of his alien classmates. His face was pale, and his hands trembled slightly at his sides. He had spoken quietly, but in the absolute silence, everyone heard him clearly. Commander HFY turned to look toward the back of the auditorium. His crystalline features shifted through several colors rapidly, indicating confusion and surprise. "Excuse me, Cadet?" "Kim Bin, sir," Ben replied, his voice stronger now that he had started. "Human Defense Corps, transferred to the Academy 3 months ago for advanced tactical training." Commander HFY consulted his digital roster, cross-referencing the name with Academy records. His crystalline surface began showing the deep blue color that indicated intense concentration. "Computer, display personnel file for Cadet Kim Bin." The holographic system responded immediately. Bin's Academy enrollment photo appeared on the massive display above Commander HFY's head. The image showed a young human with short brown hair, wearing a crisp new Academy uniform. His face looked serious but unremarkable, just another military student among thousands. Next to the enrollment photo, the computer displayed a clearer frame from the Keth-7 footage. The figure in damaged armor, covered in dirt and improvised repairs, looked like a different person entirely. But the bone structure was the same. The way the head tilted slightly when listening. The habit of checking over the right shoulder every few seconds. The resemblance was unmistakable. A sound like breaking glass came from somewhere in the middle rows. One of the Altarian cadets had accidentally cracked their own arm in shock. Several Zephyrian students released pheromones that made the air smell like ozone and fear. The Draconian cadets began breathing small puffs of flame involuntarily. "Impossible," Bo declared, rising from his seat with all 4 arms gesturing wildly. His silver skin flashed through patterns of red and black that indicated anger and disbelief. "That warrior was a legend, a tactical genius. You are just a first-year cadet who barely speaks during discussions." Other voices joined in. Some alien languages translated as expressions of doubt. Others were sounds of amazement. A few species communicated their shock through color changes that painted rainbow patterns across their forms. But Commander HFY was studying the comparison images. With growing certainty, he had access to classified files that the cadets could not see. Medical records, psychological profiles, service history. Everything was matching up. "Computer, display full military record for Kim Bin," Commander HFY ordered. New information appeared on the holographic display. Service dates, unit assignments, and a list of commendations that made several alien cadets gasp. But one entry stood out in bold letters. "Sole survivor, Recon Unit Delta 7, Keth-7 incident, classified mission parameters, full report sealed by order of GDF command." The auditorium erupted again. This time the sounds were different. Not disbelief, but amazement mixed with something approaching fear. They were looking at a living legend, someone whose survival story had become required study material at military academies across the galaxy. "I was part of Recon Unit Delta 7, Ben continued, his voice growing steadier as he committed to the truth. "We were sent to investigate Vorthak raider activity around the Terminus system. Our mission was supposed to be simple surveillance and intelligence gathering." He paused, remembering. The other cadets waited in complete silence, hanging on every word. "We landed on Keth-7 during the night cycle," Ben said. "The plan was to set up observation posts and monitor enemy movements for 2 weeks. But the Vorthak were waiting for us. They had detected our approach and prepared an ambush. Commander Hayek nodded grimly. The attack began at 0347 station time. Your unit's distress beacon lasted exactly 4 minutes and 37 seconds before being destroyed. I was checking the perimeter sensors when the shooting started, Bin explained. I heard the explosions and ran back toward our landing zone. But by the time I got there, he stopped, his voice catching slightly. Everyone was dead. The ships were destroyed. The communication equipment was slag. I was alone. So-Ra made a sound like wind chimes in a storm. How did you survive the first day? I hid, Bin said simply. I found a cave and stayed there for about 6 hours, trying to figure out what to do. The Vorthak were still searching the area, so I couldn't move during daylight. I had my basic gear and whatever supplies I could salvage from the wreckage. Wu leaned forward, studying Bin with new respect. But you did not simply hide. The footage shows active resistance from day 3 onward. Bin shrugged, a gesture that looked strange and alien among all the exotic body languages around him. Hiding wasn't working. They were getting closer to finding me each day. I figured if I was going to die anyway, I might as well make them work for it. The explosive devices you constructed, Deuce said through their mechanical speakers. How did you acquire knowledge of demolitions? My father worked construction back on Earth, Bin replied. I helped him during summer breaks before I enlisted. You learn things about how buildings come apart when you help put them together. This answer seemed to confuse the alien cadets even more. They had expected to hear about secret military training or advanced human combat techniques. Instead, they were learning that the legendary tactical innovations had come from civilian construction experience. The medical procedures you performed on yourself, Commander Hayek asked. Where did you learn alien physiology? I didn't, Bin admitted. I was guessing most of the time. The Vorthak medical equipment looked similar to human tools, so I tried to figure out what each piece did by testing them on already dead tissue first. Several alien cadets made sounds of horror. Operating on living tissue based purely on guesswork was considered extremely dangerous by any civilized medical standard. You could have killed yourself, So-Ra observed. I was dying anyway, Bin replied matter-of-factly. Infection was setting in. I could smell the gangrene starting. If I did nothing, I would be dead in 2 days. If I tried surgery and failed, I would die maybe a few hours sooner. It seemed like a reasonable risk. Bo stood up again, his silver skin now showing patterns of grudging respect mixed with continued confusion. But the tactical innovations, the psychological warfare, the systematic destruction of enemy forces, these required advanced military training. Bin looked uncomfortable with the praise. I was just trying to stay alive. Every day was a new problem to solve. When hiding stopped working, I tried misdirection. When that wasn't enough, I started fighting back. When they adapted to my tactics, I had to try something different. But you were outnumbered hundreds to 1, Tay pointed out, waving several tentacles for emphasis. Numbers don't matter if you can avoid fighting all of them at once, Bin replied. I learned to pick my battles. Hit small groups. Make the enemy waste time and resources searching empty areas. Turn their own communication systems against them. Commander Hayek was studying Bin with intense interest now. This quiet cadet who rarely spoke in class discussions had single-handedly defeated an entire Vorthak raider base. But he was describing it like it was ordinary problem-solving rather than military genius. The technological integration you achieved, Commander Hayek said, combining human and Vorthak systems in ways our best engineers still cannot replicate. How? Trial and error, Bin said. I had a lot of time and nothing else to do. When you're trying to stay alive, you try everything. Most of my experiments failed, but occasionally something would work, and I would learn from that success. The alien cadets were struggling to understand this concept. Their species typically approached technology through formal education and careful study. The idea of learning advanced engineering through desperate experimentation was foreign to them. You never considered surrender? Wu asked. Bin was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was softer. I thought about it, especially during the first week when I was hurt and scared and running out of food, but the Vorthak don't take prisoners. I had seen what they did to my unit after they surrendered. The auditorium fell silent again. Everyone understood what he was not saying directly. So you decided to fight, Commander Hayek observed. I decided not to die, Bin corrected. Everything else was just solving problems as they came up. A new voice spoke from the middle rows. It was Lee, another human cadet who rarely participated in class discussions. Why didn't you tell anyone? We've been studying this case for months. You never said anything. Bin looked toward his fellow human, then around at all the alien faces staring at him with mixtures of amazement, respect, and confusion. What was I supposed to say? He asked. That I spent 47 days being terrified and making desperate guesses that somehow worked, that I succeeded mostly through luck and stubbornness? That doesn't sound very heroic. It sounds very human, Sora said quietly, her musical voice carrying a note of wonder. Commander Hyuk stepped closer to where Bin was standing. Cadet Kim, your survival on Keth 7 has become one of the most studied military cases in recent history. The days following Bin's revelation changed everything at the Galactic Defense Academy. Word spread through the station like wildfire. Within hours, every cadet, instructor, and staff member knew that the legendary Keth 7 survivor was walking, among them as a quiet first-year student. Bin found himself the center of attention wherever he went. Alien cadets, who had never spoken to him before, approached him in hallways, cafeterias, and study areas. Some wanted to hear more details about his survival story. Others simply wanted to understand how a human could accomplish what their species considered impossible. At first, the attention made Bin extremely uncomfortable. He was used to being invisible, just another student trying to pass his classes and stay out of trouble. Now, senior cadets from advanced programs sought him out for tactical discussions. Faculty members invited him to guest lecture in their courses. Even the Academy's administrative staff treated him with new respect. But the most significant change was in his relationships with his fellow cadets. 3 days after the briefing, Bin was eating lunch alone in the cafeteria when Sora approached his table. The Melodian's flowing energy form created gentle musical tones as she moved. But today, her usual cheerful melody sounded hesitant. "May I sit with you?" she asked. Bin looked up from his meal, surprised. "Of course. You don't need to ask permission." Sora settled into the chair across from him, her form shifting to a more comfortable configuration. "Actually, I think I do. I realize I never really knew you before. I thought I was being friendly, but I was just making polite conversation with someone I considered ordinary." "I am ordinary," Bin replied, taking a bite of his food. "What happened on Keth 7 doesn't change that." "But it does," Sora said, her voice creating harmonies that indicated confusion. "You accomplished something that military experts from 17 species study as an example of perfect tactical execution. How is that ordinary?" Bin was quiet for a moment, considering his answer. "Because I didn't feel like a tactical genius when I was doing it. I felt scared and desperate and lucky. Most of the time, I had no idea if my plans would work. I just tried things until something did work." Before Sora could respond, another voice interrupted their conversation. "Mind if we join you?" Bin looked up to see Wu approaching, followed by several other cadets, including Bo, Tay, and Du. The Draconian's scales showed the deep green coloration that indicated respect, while Bo's silver skin displayed patterns that Bin had learned meant curiosity rather than aggression. "Please," Bin said, gesturing to the empty chairs. As the alien cadets settled around the table, Bin noticed something different in their behavior. Before, they had been polite but distant, treating him like a minor character in their academy experience. Now, they focused on him with intense interest, but also with something that looked like wariness. "We have been discussing your survival methods," Bo began, his 4 hands moving in precise gestures. "Our analysis suggests that human problem-solving operates on fundamentally different principles from other known species." "I wouldn't know," Bin replied. "I've never studied other species' problem-solving methods." "That is exactly what we find so fascinating," Du observed through their mechanical speakers. "You achieved optimal solutions without formal analysis or computational support. This suggests human neural architecture processes information in ways we do not fully understand." Tay waved several tentacles in agreement. "When my species faces a complex problem, we form consensus groups to analyze all variables before acting. The idea of trying random solutions until something works seems inefficient. It probably is inefficient, Bin admitted. But efficiency doesn't matter when you're about to die. Speed matters. Creativity matters. Being willing to try stupid things that might work matters. Wu leaned forward, his dragon-like features showing intense concentration. But your solutions were not stupid. The explosive patterns you created showed sophisticated understanding of engineering principles. The psychological warfare demonstrated deep knowledge of enemy behavior. My father taught me about construction explosives, Bin explained patiently. And the psychological stuff. I just tried to think like the enemy commanders. What would confuse them? What would make them waste time? What would make them doubt their own people? You learn to think like Vorthak military leaders in a matter of weeks, Bo pointed out. Most species require years of study to understand alien psychology well enough for effective manipulation. Bin shrugged again, the gesture that his alien classmates were beginning to recognize as distinctly human. I had nothing else to do except listen to their radio chatter and watch their patrol patterns. After a while, you start to notice how they make decisions. Sora created a sound like distant bells. But how did you know your observations were correct? What if you had misunderstood their behavior patterns? Then my plans would have failed, and I would have died, Bin said matter-of-factly. But doing nothing would have killed me too, so I figured wrong action was better than no action. This statement seemed to disturb the alien cadets. Several species showed signs of distress through color changes or pheromone releases. The concept of acting on incomplete information went against most of their cultural training. Your species appears to have evolved a unique relationship with uncertainty, Du observed. Most sapient races develop decision-making processes designed to minimize risk. Humans seem to have developed processes designed to maximize adaptability. Maybe, Bin said. I never thought about it that way. On Earth, the environment changed a lot. Ice ages, floods, droughts, earthquakes. Our ancestors had to be ready for anything. Maybe that's why we got good at improvising. Commander Hayuk approached their table, his crystalline form showing the pale blue coloration that indicated official business. Cadet Kim, I apologize for interrupting your meal, but I have a request from Academy Command. Bin stood up respectfully. Yes, sir? They would like you to participate in a special advanced tactics seminar, Commander Hayuk explained. Your survival methods have raised questions about current military doctrine. The senior staff believes your perspective could be valuable in developing new training programs. Sir, I'm just a first-year cadet, Bin protested. I don't know enough about military theory to advise senior officers. That may be exactly why your advice is valuable, Commander Hayuk replied. You solved problems without being limited by conventional doctrine. Sometimes fresh perspective is more useful than extensive experience. The other cadets at the table looked impressed. Being invited to consult with Academy Command was an honor usually reserved for top graduates or distinguished faculty members. If you think it would help, Bin said reluctantly. But I should warn you, most of my solutions were pretty desperate. They worked because I had no better options, not because they were good ideas. Perhaps the willingness to try desperate solutions when conventional approaches fail is itself a valuable military skill, Commander Hayuk suggested. After the commander left, the conversation at the table resumed, but with a different tone. The alien cadets were no longer just curious about Bin's survival story. They were beginning to understand something fundamental about human nature that could change how they thought about military service. Question, Tay said, addressing the entire group. If humans can accomplish such remarkable things through improvisation and adaptability, what does this mean for mixed species military units? Bo's silver skin showed patterns of deep thought. It suggests that human soldiers might be most effective when given maximum flexibility rather than detailed orders. Like special operations teams, Wu observed. Give them an objective and let them figure out how to achieve it. But that requires enormous trust from command structure, Du pointed out. How do you coordinate multiple units when each one might solve problems differently? Sora looked at Bin. How would you command a mixed species unit? Bin considered the question carefully. I guess I would try to understand what each species does best, then let them do those things while I handled the weird problems that don't have standard solutions. The weird problems, Bo repeated. You mean the impossible situations where normal tactics fail? Exactly, Ben said. Every species we've met seems to have evolved specific strengths. Altarians are great at long-term planning. Nexari are amazing at tactical analysis. Draconians are incredible fighters. Zephyrians can coordinate complex operations. Melodians can maintain morale under extreme stress. He paused, looking around at his classmates. But humans might be good at the stuff that doesn't fit into any category. The problems that require doing something that's never been done before. A specialist in impossible situations. Commander Hayek's voice came from behind them. He had returned to listen to their discussion. That is perhaps the most accurate description of human military capability I have heard. The group turned to look at the Altarian commander, who had been quietly observing their conversation. The Academy has decided to implement a new program based on Cadet Kim's survival case, Commander Hayek announced. Mixed species tactical teams with humans specifically assigned to handle unconventional problems. We are calling it the Adaptive Solutions Initiative. Ben looked uncomfortable again. Sir, you're making it sound much more important than it really was.